Okay, guys, welcome. Welcome to our panel called Getting from Start to Finish: Designing a Website, Launching a Startup, and Building an Experience." My name is Scott Simpson. I'm a designer at iStrategy Labs. I just recently joined the team. This afternoon, I'm getting ahead of myself here. This afternoon, we have a great lineup of speakers. We got Zach Goodwin, who is creative director at iStrategy Labs. We got, and he's going to be talking a little bit about designing a website from start to finish. We got Zvi Band, who's going to speak about launching a startup. And he is CEO of Contactually. And we got Jill Spaeth, who is president and director of design at Citizen Creative. And she's going to be talking a bit about building an experience. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Zach, who's going to get us started. Thank you.
Is this thing? Hey guys, how we doing? Hold on for a second while I pull up this presentation. All right, hello. First, let me say that we did this last year, and when I spoke, I think there were about 15 people, so it's pretty cool to see everyone here. And I just love seeing my slides on that giant dome. So, this is called From Start to Finish, and my subtitle is The Mitigation of Misery. As we said earlier, I'm Zach Goodwin at ZB Goodwin, and I'm creative director at iStrategy Labs. Like this guy. So, what is iStrategy Labs? We're a digital agency. You son of a... Hold on. Perfect. Joe, why am I getting these linen bars here?
Because you are not using it perfectly. Ooh, it's getting worse.
Okay, we're going to power through with linen bars anyway. So, what is iStrategy Labs? iStrategy Labs is the agency that put on DCWEEK along with Tech Cocktail. B, we're a digital agency based in DuPont. We are now 25 strong, of which Scott is one of our most recent additions. And basically, we do everything from build websites, build iPad apps, build iPhone apps, put on crazy conferences, and not sleep. Basically, we've been staying very busy. So, why am I standing in front of you? I'm here to talk you through the steps that go into building a website, but basically to do it from the perspective of a client or someone who's not going to be the one writing that code, the person who's working in the PSD file. Instead, to talk about it from the perspective of someone who is buying a website. So maybe you're a marketing manager inside a major brand. Maybe you have a business of your own. Talking about the tools and vocabulary you need to make this process as less miserable as possible. Okay, so building, and I'm not talking about any website. I'm talking about a remarkable, usable, beautiful website. Building this website is like war. It's not easy. It's not fun. No one likes doing it. It's dirty. You're going to make some progress, and you're going to fall back. You think you've solved it. You haven't. It's difficult. But, my friends, there exists a roadmap. That roadmap can be summed up in 5 phases: discovery, IA, design and UX, development, and testing. But wait. What are the 2 things? This is going to be fun because it's going to be interactive and you're going to shout out answers. What are the 2 things you need? You're the client, you're about to buy this amazing website. What are the 2 things you need in order to make this process possible?
Money.
Product.
Domain.
Domain, okay. Content. I like these.
Zach Goodwin.
Love it. So, the one that was actually shouted out first, and maybe a joke, but I think is absolutely the most important, you need some money. And the reason you need money is because there often seems to be this perception that, like, everyone has a website. I deserve a website. Of course, I'm going to have a website. However, putting the right amount of money so that you can get the team that can build it correctly, essential. The other, and this is the one that people spend the least amount of time considering, is time. So if you give us 3 weeks to build a website, I mean, it's either literally impossible or the product you're going to get is not the one you want. So time, being able to plan in advance to have the product or to give your team the time they need to build the thing. So these are the two absolute essentials. I have the 5 tiers here. So there's the do-it-yourself, completely free. Big advantage there. Disadvantage, it might look like this. Freelance. Freelance, both Zvi and I worked at different times being freelance designer, freelance developer. Freelance is great, and you can get something real affordable. I was going to put prices on here associated with each, but I got nervous about doing that. So freelance can be much cheaper. I think as low as $3,000, you could be getting yourself a nice website. However, you're not going to have a project manager. You may have the guy who's doing design also doing development, or the guy who's doing your development also doing design. And it's basically like you two are dating for the next 4 months as you go about trying to make a website. 3, there's something like Zvi and I at some point teamed up and worked together. We were like a PM-less little mini agency. That means that we were the ones who were doing the communication directly with the clients. That's okay, but when your developer is angry at you or you've annoyed your designer, he's not going to answer your email. Having a project manager, someone whose sole job it is to keep you happy, to talk to you every day, to give you progress reports, equally importantly, to keep your designer and developer on task. These are essential pieces that separate an agency from a straight freelance team. Agency, and so I had some price points here. And then there's the fancy pants agency. That's where you're trying to build Amazon and you have $5 million. Okay, so back to our roadmap. Discovery. So I'm basically just going to describe these for each set. I have a description which talks about kind of our process, the things I've learned, and then I have like a little set of rules about each one. So discovery. Discovery is something that is absolutely essential and we never ever skip. Discovery always has to take place where we are physically in the room with the client and all of their decision makers. So this isn't something where we get on like an hour-long conference call. This is we are going to sit together in a room with 8 whiteboards and we're going to drink Red Bulls for the next 4 hours and we're going to try to plot out everything we know about this future website. We're going to conceive it right there in front of each other's eyes. So the act of being in the same room, super essential. The act of talking through these details, super essential. And at the end, we walk away with an ironclad statement of purpose for this website. I feel like this is so essential, and it's something that can be so easily glossed over because everyone recognizes the importance of having a website. So there's this impression that, of course, I know I need a website, so a website will make itself happen. And knowing why you want that website and what purpose that website serves other than being like a business card on the internet for you. So trying to get a really discrete and granular, basically defense for your website's existence. Why is it there and why do we care? Knowing your goals, knowing your audience, your conceptual approach, and equally important, your limitations. Often and very often we will build these blogs for companies that will blog 3 times and then not again in the future because in their set of capabilities, they don't have someone who's going to be doing this every day, which is something that's really important to know up front and then don't waste the time doing it. Audience, again, equally important. There's often the impression that you know who your audience is, but having some data behind it is super helpful. Information architecture. So this is actually a wireframe for a client that we just finished working for. And by the end of the thing, we had, it's pretty hard to see, huh? It's a little dark, 79 wireframes. So this is just a straight up website. We must have spent 3 months doing wireframes. But the payoff to that is that at the end, we have this rigorous and bullet-proof framework for every piece of functionality that's going to go into that website. So when you open, you decide to connect using Facebook login button, we have a screen for that. When you decide you want to tweet from inside the website, we have a screen for that. When we have different states for different sizes of browser, we have a state for that. So it's annoying, but that early upfront work will save you not only time, but a huge amount of money in the act of building out the website. So my rule here is plot with OCD ferocity to ensure that all functionality concepts are accounted for. Again, be realistic about the true function of your website. As you're making this thing, you'll realize that contact page that felt super essential could maybe be condensed into an element on the footer. A phone book is comprehensive but useless. This is like a description you use all the time. Everyone wants to put as many things as humanly possible onto that about page, for instance. But the more things you put in there, the less they're seeing what's left behind. So think of the phone book and how difficult it is to find that one phone number within it. Okay, so we've covered discovery, we've covered information architecture. Let's go to the most important, the most fun, the most heralded, design and UX. I kid, because that's what we do, or what I do. So this is a PSD from the building of our website, which we recently revamped. From having done this now for a number of years, I think you can break it down into four important takeaways. Iterate obsessively, create custom templates, don't be a designer if you're not one, and emphasize states. So again, I'm thinking from the perspective of the client. I'm a person who's buying a website. The iterating obsessively is going to be a challenge for your design team, but to be constantly looking for options that you can choose from. So I don't want one homepage, I want 5 homepages. Once we've established a style and we've decided together how we're going to make this thing work, we can move away from this rapid fire iteration. However, in the beginning, don't be cornered into making a decision based on the fact that it's the only option you received. So iteration. And 2, especially if you are the client, you're the one who's buying the website, to ask to request changes and to have them made and sent back to you on a timely schedule. But on your end, you have to be good about working with the schedule that you've established in advance. So you can ask for a bunch of changes as long as that's found on the schedule that you previously established. Create custom templates. This is kind of a weird one. But often when you get your contract to buy this website, it will say, I want a homepage and I want 2 interior templates, or I want 3 interior templates. That works if you're going to have a website that has 5 pages, or if your website has content that only needs to fit in one kind of page. However, most of the websites that you use and like and that work incredibly well, they work incredibly well because the interior pages have been designed to suit the content that's there. So if you have a website that's going to have a ton of functionality, or a website that's going to have a bunch of different kinds of content, it's essential that you pay upfront to get those templates that are going to be designed around your content. Does that make sense? Like typically you will have homepage and you will have interior, and then people will try to cram in all the other content into that same secondary template. And so my argument is to pay a little bit more, but to ultimately get interior pages that are designed around the content you really have. If you're not a designer, don't be one. So if you're the client, you have just paid, in theory, money, perhaps a lot of money, to get this thing. Don't argue about typefaces. Stick to the things that you as a human being are going to be helpful at, like legibility, overall pleasurability of the website. But let's not get into talking about serifs versus sans serifs. And emphasize states in the files you end up getting back from your design agency or design team. States meaning I don't want just a rollover and a not rollover, I want to consider all of the different interactions that are going to take place when that user is on my website, and I want a ready set and already pre-designed set of reactions to the many states. Discovery, information architecture, design and UX development takes us to the last one, and the one in which Zvi and that entire team is far more knowledgeable than I. Rules. Provide enough time to do good work. Provide enough time to test. Your dev and designers should be working together every day. So the provide enough time, I think, is the most essential one. Dev is at the end of the cycle. So dev is the last thing to get files. So if you agreed at the outset that this whole thing was going to take 3 months, but everyone else took 3.5 months to get their piece done, and suddenly you, the client, are calling and saying, the website's late, and we try to push dev to do their part faster than is humanly possible, that's how we get a website that no one is proud of and underperforms. So the timeline is a flexible thing, or the timeline is often a flexible thing that is going to slide. And what you can't do is compound the pressure on development and to reduce the amount of time they have in order to hit some arbitrary endpoint that someone set 6 months ago. So I'd work as hard as possible to make sure that if dev agreed to do the thing in 2 months, the dev has 2 months no matter how much time came beforehand. Provide enough time to test. So often, these projects take a while, and they're often centered around one special launch date. And so everyone's working until the last possible minutes. The last, CSS style sheet is uploaded, and then suddenly the website's live. If it's an emergency, maybe, but it's a recipe for disaster because we're all designing on nice browsers, and the rest of the world is not necessarily using them. So to give the allotted 2 weeks to have real testing as well as to have QA. Your designers and developers should be working together every day. In an ideal world, the two teams are next to each other so they can interact and it's not like they're firewalled off. And that is it. Thank you.
I can pull mine. Oh, you want to pull this out?
Yes.
Womp womp. All right. Can anyone see that screen? All right, cool. You can see what I'm doing. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Zvi Band. As Zach kept mentioning, I was a freelance developer for a number of years. About 1.5 years ago, I completely switched and I went from a nice steady income stream into taking a huge bet on an idea that I came up with myself. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. So I want to start off by talking about, or by showing 2 slides. First off, this is, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Evernote. You can see at the top, I have 95 ideas, and that's actually after only using Evernote for about 3 months. So anytime I had an idea good enough to put into Evernote, I write it down. And I had this idea, based on running my business. I really wanted a good, kind of CRM tool that really worked for me. And so I kind of jotted down this idea of a proactive CRM. I had a bunch of names for it, Mailbread, Contact Hive, Inbox Ping, terrible things. Ended up going with a name called Enforcery, but we'll get into that in a second. So it really started out with just an idea. And this is in May of 2011. This is last night. This is a screen of the 15,000 plus users who are currently Contactually users. You can see actually, we're pretty bad in chat in Mongolia. United States, we're doing pretty well. Got a ways to go. But really, chat and Mongolia are really my focuses right now. So that's why I'm here to talk to you about today. When I was getting started with this idea, I had no idea how to get to this point. I had no idea how to actually kind of build it to a point where there would be 15,000 people that actually didn't think that we sucked. And so, I want to kind of dive a little bit into the sausage factory and the actual steps we took to get to where we are today. So first off, the idea. I'm sure all of you have an idea. All of you have ideas all day long. You can have an idea, driving to work, in the shower one day, pains you have, everything like that. And so I had 95 of them that I thought were decent. And I mean, most people that I've seen, that I've talked to and mentor nowadays think that, okay, all you have an idea, if you just start with an idea, that you can go ahead and execute it. This is probably one of the scariest things that you can put in front of someone with an idea, but it's actually one of the most valuable things ever. Who's familiar with this, by the way? Really? Come on. 1 out of 10 people? All right, good. We've got work to do. This is something called the lean canvas. And if you subscribe to the lean startup theory, which is probably one of the better methods in order to vet and actually execute on an idea nowadays, this becomes your Bible. This is a really excellent way of laying out and thinking about all the core things about your idea. So, for example, you walk through your problem. What are the top 3 problems that people have that your idea can solve? What are the top 3 features that your solution will have? Not 30, not 50, 3. What are key metrics? And I mean, I can't tell you how much I still kick my ass nowadays because we thought a lot about key metrics, but we could think a lot more. Who are the customer segments? What are the revenue streams? What's our cost structure? How are what channels are we going to use to reach the users? And I mean, this is if you have an idea and you think it's so cool, and then you're presented with this and you really don't want to think about it, I mean, slap yourself and really focus. Because, I mean, one of the key learning points that one of our advisors really, focuses on early on is, would you rather spend your time vetting your idea up front and making sure that this is something that you can actually execute on? Or do you only want to start thinking about how you're going to reach customers after you spent 10 months and $300,000? So that's your choice. So one of the most important things that I kind of keep reminding myself nowadays is your focus really isn't to build a cool product or to have a great idea. It's to really build a business, and a business relies on customers. Maybe it relies on one customer being the federal government. Maybe it relies on 15,000 enterprise software users. Maybe it relies on 3 million kids with iPhones. So one thing that, again, it's hard. It's a lot of work. You just want to jump into design and building something cool. Spend time doing customer development. Really understand your customer. And I mean, this was kind of hard for us, honestly, initially, because I had this really, really strong idea, and I knew that, oh my God, this is going to be cool. But then I brought someone on my team, and his job was for 3 months to do nothing but interview people, find people to talk to who might fit the idea that we're trying to build, and interview them. And so, I mean, this is actually a pretty short interview. We just spent around 45 minutes with people, just asking them open-ended questions, about what their pains are, what kind of solution, what are they using now. And I mean, initially I had a hard time. I went to my close group of friends and I was like, all right, who are the 5 or 10 people that may or may not need something like this? And I was like, well, I'll find the rest later. Once we build the product, then it'll show up. And I had a mentor come to me and say, absolutely no. What are you thinking about? If you can't, when you just have an idea, if you can't find 10 people who might benefit from your product, how are you going to find 10 people when you've built the product? Now, of course, you may think in your head that, oh, there's different ways of doing it. But honestly, it's worth the time up front to really think and to really focus on, on figuring out how you're going to get people. I mean, honestly, it's costs what, $50 on Google AdWords to run a bunch of ad campaigns to just get people to your site, or go to Craigslist and ask random questions, or Quora. I mean, Quora is actually the best way for us. And if you're trying to build a software company nowadays or any kind of thing, go on Quora and ask the experts in your industry, and you'll be amazed by the kind of people that you'll reach on Quora. Next thing you want to think about is the MVP. So you may have, based on your lean canvas, you may have the top 3 features that you think people need, but then you have 15 or 20 more that you think are really, really awesome that you really want to have. Stop. This is my idea. Just stop and focus on what is the 1 or 2 things that you can build right now that will get people to validate your idea. So obviously, like, we were kind of building this kind of CRM system, and we had this whole really complex back-end infrastructure, and we had all these machine learning things we needed to build and all the security stuff that we had to build out first. But then we simplified it down, and we actually simplified it down to something that's actually incredibly ugly. You can see, actually, the name is completely different. We had a holding name called Enforcery. It literally was this really sketchy website where people would go to it and they click to connect their Gmail inbox, and we'd go and like read their email. And it worked. I mean, we had probably, 200, 250 people sign up just with that before we finally started really building out the product. But it taught us a lot of really interesting things because, by having this really initial and frankly now ugly API, or ugly interface, it really taught us about what people wanted. So, we had tagging built out initially. We had a lot of focus on tagging and, everyone would go and tag their contacts as they're using it. But then we learned that while I really love tagging, my co-founder really loved tagging, maybe some people in the room really love tagging, the average prosumer has absolutely no idea what to put in a tag. So we're like, all right, fine. Guess, this is not important. We have to find another way. And I mean, it's kind of one of those learnings that you can only have once you have an MVP out and really start sharing it with users. Now we get into the execution. So I would say probably by October of last year, we had validated our idea. We had built an MVP. We had a few hundred users using it, and we had proven, both on, customer feedback and experts, and then finally getting investors on board, that this is actually something that we should go out and continue to execute. And I mean, there was no hard line between like when we stopped with the MVP and started really executing. It was just kind of more of an evolution. And so that's kind of when we really started falling back to kind of one of the core graphics or core images that we focus on today. And I actually have this on my desktop nowadays, and I always look at it. Who's familiar with this, by the way? All right. So this is kind of the core essence of the Lean Startup principle. And I mean, so Eric Ries came up with this idea. He's kind of one of the founders of the Lean Startup principle. And this is kind of, is in essence what you as a company, as an early stage company, really need to be focusing on. You start out, in the top right corner by building something. You have an idea, you start it by building it. Then you go to a product, then you focus a lot on measuring it. So you do everything you can to instrument your product. So we have probably actually like 5 or 6 different test suites right now running in our application. We have A/B tests running every day. And we probably collect from each user, I calculated probably around 3,000 data points every day about everything that they're doing. Every email is coming in, every click they're making on our website, every open of an email, everything you can imagine. And then from that measurement, we get data. And from the data, we're able to learn. So we learn what people are doing and what people aren't doing. So again, this is a way that we started slowly introducing tagging back into our application, and we learned that what people are using and what people aren't using. And of course, learning comes from and learning begets ideas. So again, we collected a lot of user feedback. We understood what they really wanted. We started categorizing it. That came up with more ideas for how we can change things. And that kind of then iterated back into the build process. Now, of course, you could be iterating. You could be running through this loop as many times as you can. And it might be for different things. You might be running it through a loop just to see, all right, how can I increase the conversions from my homepage to the end of the sign-up process? Or how can I get people to pay for the product? Or how can I get people to actually respond to the email that I email them every morning at 9 a.m.? And so it's kind of these things that have really, really helped us build this business. And I mean, again, it's not a lot of like, it's not necessarily about the product you're building, or it's not about it's not about the features that you're rolling out every day. And for me as a developer, it's actually a very hard thing to break out of this idea that we should simply just build more stuff. But it's really focusing on this process that has really allowed us to succeed to where we are today. So overall, I would say make sure, and this starts from your very, very beginning. Once you have the idea, is to think about what you want to be measuring. Remember that everything you do is an experiment. You're not building a new feature. You're experimenting whether or not this feature is going to be the right thing for users. And then finally, you're building a business, not a product. So that's me. I close with with even the progression of our logo. We started out with this horrible name called Enforcery, which actually was a domain name I already owned. And then slowly, as we kind of iterated on the product, it actually became slowly to the brand we call today. So any questions? I'm Skeevis on Twitter or zviak@contactually.com. Thanks. Oh, it is? Okay. This here? Cool.
Also, I should mention that we're going to have questions once we're done here. So be thinking of questions.
So hurry up and finish, Joe.
What? No. Think of amazing questions for Drew.
I'm going to go full screen on this view. Enter full screen, this. Oh. Okay. Hey, y'all. My name's Jill Spaeth. I have a cold, and I just got my voice back, so thank you for... I don't usually sound like a frog, is basically what I'm saying. I'm the president and director of design at Citizen Creative, a company I started in March of 2010 after working for an architect for several years. We all know real estate is really hot right now. So that's why I had to go out on my own. No, just kidding. The firm I worked for, I was in charge of the graphic studio. And when I first went there, I was just an in-house little peon graphic designer. I did like cool business cards that were 6 colors because real estate was, cool in 2004. And then when we hit this bubble, I don't know if y'all know about it, things got a little drab and dreary. And they said, well, we can keep the graphic designers, but how can we incorporate them more into our projects? And I was like, these people are kind of smart. I like these guys now. They want me involved in their architectural projects. And that's kind of where the magic all came together. So basically what I do is I look at a space as a graphic designer, and I try to incorporate a company's brand, their message, their identity into the space. And then I also come on as a signage consultant where I do signage programs for campuses and buildings. So I'm going to show you today is a project I just finished for Washington Gas, their new facilities in Alexandria, which is actually a parcel over from where they used to be. This was a build-to-suit, so Fox Architects is the company I used to work for. They were hired as the architect and interior designer, and they brought me in as a signage consultant. So on my projects, I am working with so many freaking people. Like, so many people. I don't even know who pays my bills sometimes, because I just send them and hope I get a check in 30 days. Most of the time I'm hired in by the architect, but I can be brought in by the end user, by Washington Gas, or sometimes by even the broker. Depends on how the deal is structured. But my process is a little bit different than, say, creating a website, because this project took 2 years. So my plans and my schemes kind of go along with what's happening with the architecture, and it can get really confusing and dicey and who's on first, and I don't know who the contractor is or who I call when I need a file. So it's really good to be a part of a process and a team who's really good at communicating, really good at sharing files and using technology to move everything along. That's my info. Okay, so the way that we start out our projects is inspect and discover, and this is where we survey. If someone says I need a signage package, That's nice. Is it interior? Is it exterior? Where is it going? What are the jurisdictions in that area? How many signs can I put there? Where can the signs go? How big can they be? What kind of materials can I use? Can I light them? Do I not have to light them? Can I put a banner up? No, yes. I don't know. It's very confusing in any jurisdiction you're in. It gets really confusing and dicey. So what we do first is take a look at the site plan. And what I do is, first of all, look at the jurisdiction and try and find somebody in the county that I can talk to. If I can find the name of a person in DC, it's terrible. It's awful. It's the worst thing ever. But luckily, in Alexandria, it's a little bit more, they're a little bit more accommodating. In Arlington, they're actually fantastic. So if anyone from Arlington is here, that's wonderful. So what I do is take a look at a site like this. I get this from an architect, and they're like, we need some signs here on this property to tell people where to go. Where's the building? No, I'm kidding. Some people do ask that, though, but a lot of times what I do is look at the building, I look where the parking is, I try and understand who the users of the site are and how they're going to use this space. So in the case of Washington Gas, they have several different groups of people. Number one, it's the actual workers who go out to service different lines. There are the employees of the administration side, the industrial side, and then there are people who have gas lines in their house can come here to pay their bills and get more information about their home. So it's a large multi-use facility, and this is where all the green dots. Oh, yeah, you can't even see it. Where all the green dots are, that's where the points of interest are and the points of decision are made. So that's where I come into play with a lot of my projects and a lot of my signs. So in this facility, there are interior, exterior signs. There's a parking garage that has 4 levels. How people get in and out of the garage, who uses the garage, where the signs go, how big can they be. And then in the back of the site, there's an industrial center where they do a lot of building. So in schematic design, just pretty much like everything else, that's the next phase of the project. Once we know what we can do, we have our roadmap, we come up with sketches, we come up with ideas. What can the sign look like? How interesting can it be? What kind of materials can I use? How large can it be? How many lights can I put on my sign? That's where we kind of do in schematic design phase. And in between all of these phases, we meet with the client to go through the process. So after the first phase, we meet with them and tell them what we think we can do, and then we talk about what they want. So normally people come to me and just say they need signs, and then I have to dig deeper to figure out what exactly you mean by I need a sign. And then our next phase is called design development. So once we give them sketches, they can respond to us and say, I like where you're going with this concept, further that concept along. Okay, good. White. So that's where we develop. These are some of the examples of some interior signs, different materials, different sizes. There's different regulations for what you need on signs. That's where mine comes into play. It's a little bit different than building a website, perhaps, where on a website, if you have a mistake, you can just go in and fix it. With a signage package that costs over $100,000, if there's a mistake, guess who fixes it? Me. So I have to be really sure that what I'm providing to the person who's going to build this is right, and it's going to be approved, and that when the fire marshal comes in to look at the property, they can say, oh, this is good to go. This sign meets all of the regulations. It's hung in the right place, everything. Then we go into construction documentation, and this is where we detail. All of our signs have every single solitary detail you can possibly think of, because when the set goes out to someone to build it, they need to be able to build it with everything I have there. I can't miss a single square inch. Everything has to be detailed and put together so that they can construct this. This is an example of the monument sign that's actually was just installed. And it gives you a little bit of a flair, but this happens for every single sign that goes on the property. So this phase of the game is where we spend a lot of our time. Maybe it's comparable to like the development side. It takes a lot of time, and this is where we make sure we meet all of those regulations, and we go through things 2 or 3 times just to make sure. And then in construction administration, this is where we work with the fabricator to make sure the sign is being built to the bright idea I had. And we manage them through the process, actually go on site and make sure they're getting installed in the right places is usually key. And it's a big construction zone, so hard hats and steel-toed boots. It's a very in-depth process. And then when we're done, we look at our really cool signs and we think, wow, we did a great job and we followed all the codes and nothing was bad. And this is just a couple examples of the finished product. This is the entrance to the industrial building. This is the parking garage. And then this is the main entrance to the admin building. And that's it.
Hey, let's have some questions. Hello. All right. So I'm hoping there are some questions. If you have them, raise your hand and we will call on you, and you can direct it to one or all of us. Yes.
I love the statement about the ironclad statement of work in your third or fourth slide, and then all the iterations afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Reconcile those two, because I think one of the biggest problems is
Sure. So I would say that purpose needs to be, to some degree, inflexible. And I say the purpose is inflexible in the event that you are building this in partnership with someone you are paying. When we work on our internal projects, we take a basically lean startup approach. Like, we've developed 2 products now in-house. And when doing that, we are constantly saying, is what we thought was cool actually cool? Is what we thought was useful actually useful? When it comes to partnering with someone who you are paying, the act of trying to firm up internally what you think those answers are before you spend your hard-earned money in pursuit of it, I think is essential. So I think it requires, and the reason, like, often for us, this is not us sitting down with 3 people. This is there 30 people who have come together and found budget to make this happen. So when I say ironclad, that means on the client side that there is a universal agreement about what the point of this thing is. Now, I would argue that there's a difference between purpose and design, purpose and execution, or purpose of the bringing to life of that purpose, if that makes sense. And that's where I think iteration is a profound part of the process and can't be avoided. One other caveat, like, I kind of feel like I'm giving I'm giving up this, like, golden egg, because for us it's always terrible if we have to iterate. That makes our life much harder. However, for you guys, when you're buying your website or you're working with a designer, that should be something upfront that you absolutely demand. Just don't do it with us. I'm completely kidding. No, I'm just saying that this is a tool you have and should absolutely make use of when you're working with a designer. Next question. Hey.
I have a question for Jill. Jill, I'm just curious, what kind of horror stories can you share with signage?
Signage horror stories. Like I was saying earlier, my projects are huge and they cost a lot of money, so I have a lot of errors and omissions insurance. And I got that one time because I was putting in a rather large signage package. It was actually environmental graphics, and one of which was a 14-foot plexiglass panel that was going into a niche that I did not know the architect had filled the niche in specifically for me after they saw my drawing. Communication, key. So 14-foot panel going to be installed, and I got to this space and I was like, holy crap, it's never going to fit there. I'm going to go have a nervous poop because I don't know how I'm going to fit this in there, and I'm going to have to pay for this if it doesn't fit in. Oh my God, I was so nervous. And let me tell you what, it fit by 1/4 of an inch on each side. Yeah, it looks really hot though, by the way. But yeah, that's one of my, like, that I was scared that I was going to have to pay for that. That's what I get scared about.
Who's got one? Yes, sir.
Question for Zvi. When you had your MVP for your product, how did you know when to start charging for it and getting customers?
So the question was, when we had our MVP, how did we know we should start charging it, and like when I guess we should go out and start getting customers? So the first part of the question is, it was kind of this like slow progression. So initially, like we just had the MVP out there, then we're like, all right, well let's actually see what people are willing to pay. So we just like built like a very basic like pricing page, and so like we had when people signed up, we had them click on what pricing plan they want. And so we tested that. We saw like, all right, which pricing plans are people are going to be comfortable with. Then we slowly finally added in credit card processing. And then it's actually only like in May of this year did we actually start like pushing people to upgrade. And only now are we actually like shutting down people's accounts if they don't pay. So it's a slow progression. Then for the second part of your question, when you asked about when did we go out and start getting users, that was honestly like almost at idea inception. You know, once I had done some initial customer development, we threw up together a very quick landing page, and already starting then, we were figuring out, all right, how could we go out and get users, and talking about our idea. So, and I mean, I think customer acquisition should be basically part of the whole lifespan of the company. So.
At the top. Yes, sir.
Do you guys ever just do mock-ups for your customers at first so they can go out and test those instead? And that way...
Sure. Yeah, so I would say that the only thing is you can't get stuck in the trick of trying to jump ahead to some kind of execution as a test without doing the due diligence that comes before it. With that said, once we have had that discovery meeting, once we have agreed on what our purpose is, once we have taken a look at like style tiles or something that indicates some kind of visual direction, at that stage, like especially, and this most often happens with a homepage, right? The homepage is the thing that people get most obsessive about, that first visual interaction, because it's such a sense of legitimacy. You land on a homepage, and in 30 minutes or 30 seconds, you decide this is worthwhile or it isn't. So testing options, even if it's a static comp, would make most sense at that point. There are also services that you can use that will supply your static JPEGs to like a bevy of sitting and waiting testers who will click through as though it's a real website, and you can get results that way. Top.
Yeah. Going to, so you kind of answered the question in terms of how do you have this ironclad purpose but then build in that iteration, and so you were talking about how you want to follow this lean approach, and that's kind of what you guys, Zach, you had talked about doing internally. So if that's kind of the ideal, is there not a way to try and do that in this kind of external facing thing? Is that advisable? Can you figure out some way to do that?
Yeah, totally. So I think so when you have your project manager and you're setting out, and let's say you're in your week 3 of building a website together, I do think, and I think the warfare obviously is a joke as a comparison, but it's true that this is something where you and the client have to work as a unit, and you're an embedded unit, and things are going to get ugly, and you fight through it together. And I think we aim for a rigor of process, but in actuality, the fluidity of feedback and revisions is more akin to a startup mode. I think you have to establish a structure and then figure out when it's best to break it. So, like for instance, we do not do a set number of revisions. We don't charge for additional revisions. Ours are like kind of a rolling negotiation once we've engaged, if that makes sense. Down there.
Can you talk a little bit more about your research phase, Spaeth? You run your lead startup research.
So the question is, can we talk a little bit more about our research phase? So yeah, sure. So once I had the idea, kind of vetting it with customers was really important. So obviously the first thing is to like build up like a list of like, or a hypothesis of like who you want or who you want to talk to. And so for that, obviously we started with our personal network, and then we kind of started reaching out. Well, like, all right, so based on our hypothesis, that we filled out with the Lean Canvas, we're like, who are the people that we want to reach out to? Started doing a lot of target outreach. I reached out to people via LinkedIn. Again, Quora. We have a whole blog post about using Quora for customer development. So that was really important. And then, then it's all about like the questions, asking them, it's half, and when you're talking to them, it's half like sales pitch and then half like discovery, because you want to get to the point where the idea that you're talking about is something that they'll say, yes, this is what I want to use. And so there's a lot of iterating back and forth. I think the most important thing is, copious note taking. I'm terrible at it, but one of the co-founders I brought on is pretty good at it. So he takes really good notes about everything, and we share that with the team, and we constantly review it. And then our research phase never really stopped. We're still doing it to some extent. It's a little bit more targeted now around around the product we have and the vision we're executing on. But I think it's it's definitely one of the most important things you can do.
Yes, sir.
When you sell a website to a company that's full of non-technical people, how do you turn that over to them in a way that they can update it, maintain it, and if major revisions are needed, does it make sense to go back to the original, or what's the advantage of going back to original designers versus a new agency?
Gotcha. So we always build a CMS that the client can use, and there's a period of training. So I didn't list that in my 5 steps. But for instance, we just finished a project for Deloitte, and Deloitte was taking all of their thoughtware, which encompasses something like 2,000 articles, journals that all of their economists and experts write every year. They wanted one place that was going to be like a library on the internet where you could come in and have what would be the equivalent of maybe an iPad experience or reading it in a glossy magazine, and you were going to be able to find all of this content from that they had published throughout the year in one place and view it in a way that felt like more than a website. So this was a big lift technically to try to take this content, which was often 3,000 or 4,000 words, and had graphs and graphics, photos, and try to put it into a web page in a way that didn't look like it was just crammed into a blog post. That was accomplished through a number of templates, and yet, because we have a super dev shop, the back end of the system is simple enough that anyone at Deloitte's team, despite being completely non-technical, can upload content, choose from a number of templates for the exterior display of things. So I guess what I'm getting at is basically it would need to be a radical revision of the way either they want to display content or the functionality of the site for them to ever need us again. With that said, we're on call for technical support if a server goes down or something. Time? It is 2 minutes. Yes, sir.
Typically, when you start working with a client, how do you structure your contract? Who owns the copyright on the artwork? And in a situation like you said, you're building a CMS.
Right.
So if you own the copyright on the artwork and they're changing content to the CMS.
So we always use an open source package for the development of that back end. In this case, it was WordPress. So we don't own it all. We had the brain power that he took WordPress and turned it into something that they could use in this very targeted way. Art belongs to the client. So it's not like recently we just had to do some very serious photography for Planned Parenthood. In the case of that photo shoot, the photographer retains the rights to photos, and you license them year over year or for certain uses. It's not like that for us and the development of creative technology. Once you have paid for it, it's yours indefinitely. I think that's probably it. So thank you guys so much, and thank you to Scott, Jill, and Zvi.